Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you guys for the organization. I was really impressed by all the presentation we've seen since yesterday and today. The quality is really, really good. So I hope my presentation will stay on level. But it is quite different. And so we'll see where it goes. And I'm Régis André. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management. I'm the French accent of the presentation. You just had the Spanish accent. Finally, we're getting to nice accents this week. I'm in charge of the product strategy at Avid for everything that has to do with asset management and news production. And really, when we talk about the content chain, the content production chain and everything, and how the cloud, we talk about the stacks this morning. Nico was talking about the stack. I like the picture with the different crepes and stuff in there to eat through the stack. But Avid has been working for the last few years, since 2011, on the Media Central platform, which is really a stack when you look at it. What's very interesting when you look at those kind of solutions, they can be very closed platforms. And like everybody has been saying today, I think it's true for Avid as well, is the key to the success to create a platform or a framework is really to make something that's very, very open. So when you see a platform, and that could be the Avid platform, or we see TDL and we see the Everts and everybody, the success of those platforms and how you're going to be successful to deploy those platforms are going to be based on really how open those platforms are. And that's a lot of work that's going on right now in all of those companies to make sure that APIs using standards and things like this are core to those different platforms. So I'm not going to go a full-blown Media Central platform description here. I think you had a lot of very technical presentation today and yesterday. One of the things I wanted to take you on is more like a journey. How do we get to the cloud? And you know, we just saw a great presentation about taking the man to the cloud and things like this. But what Avid has been focusing and announcing at NAB is a new program called Avid On Demand. It's a SaaS offering from Avid that's really focusing on helping you on a journey to take some of your production systems, some of your workflows, and really laser focus deployments in the clouds where it makes the most sense. So instead of saying, hey, we're going to take Avid and put everything that Avid does in the cloud and then work with you to try to figure out how we're going to make it work, what makes sense. Avid has been laser focusing on really two aspects first that seems to be very prominent in this day of age. One of them is called shared library. And you guys stole my thunder this morning because my opening statement here is shared library is a new word at Avid to replace the word archive. We don't use the word archive anymore at Avid because there's too much stigma around archive, and a lot of people think of archive where the media are going to die. So we want to change that. Exactly, so that's why we want to change that. And it's really about shared library. How can we make something that's really going to help you to really maximize the reusability of your footage or your content? How can you discover it? How can you continue to enhance metadata using the power of the cloud and AIs in a way that that content that you're archiving, it's really there to be reused and reused. And there's no reason to store something if no one can find it, right? So that's really one of the issues. That's why we're not using the word archiving again. Another big problem is how do you facilitate these workflows? Of course, within a facility, you all do that. You all have an LTO probably of some NAS. But how do you enable that within your entire organization as well? Many more of our customers don't have one single production site. Even on the same site, they may have different production systems with different archives. Or you can have many sites. So what I'm going to go through through the presentation now is more like a use case of some of the things that we are working on to install right now with some customers that really we're going to help them leverage quote archive capabilities across different silos, across different geographies. A good example is what we're doing with Al Jazeera, where they're going to archive content across the globe into all their different bureaus using such a technology as well. And that's where the cloud as well really shine and help streamline all those workflows and make it simpler. So I'll start with a simple use case. You have a production site. I'm based in Boston, so I started in Boston. And of course, you have your whole production here. You may have a local archive system, and that's all great. But again, more and more productions get distributed. You get more and more silos that are created everywhere. You may have your sports department in a location, your news department in another location, and things and so on. And you can start to try to configure your system to start transferring media peer-to-peer or point-to-point from all of those things. You can imagine for some broadcasters, this turns into chaos, managing all those connections, making sure that they're always working, making sure that if something bad happened in Dallas, like a school shooting, suddenly everybody wants to download that media from Dallas, and the Dallas system just goes kaput because everybody's trying to download the same file. It's not manageable at scale. So, of course, what would make sense is to say maybe instead of having each site transferring media to one and over like this, we will eventually centralize it. The other reason why you might want to do that is tornado or something happened in Florida. There's a file here, everybody wants it, so suddenly that file gets transferred and copied to Portland in Oregon, gets copied in Chicago, and then so on and so on. You end up having duplicate files in many of your production systems, and every one of those sites, I can guarantee, will also archive that content. Suddenly you have this footage which takes storage in many, many places within the organization. One of my customers made some math. They're losing, they think, $1 to $2 million a year in storage cost because they have so many copies of the same content across their entire organization. Those are huge numbers. We all know storage is a very expensive part of our file-based workflows, especially when you go to the cloud. We talk about the egress pricing and things like this. So how can we maximize, again, the usage of our storage without having to store more and more in the same file? So one key to that, of course, is to say, hey, we're not going to let everybody transfer from anywhere. We're just going to try to centralize something, and we could put a big storage somewhere, and everybody's going to push content to that storage. That's okay, it works. That's stuff that exists already today, so nothing fantastic. But that's where when you start thinking about the cloud, where it makes a lot of sense, because suddenly that local centralized storage is not really centralized anymore, it's in the cloud. With all the benefits that we just talked about today, with replications, redundancy, security, and all that great stuff. And the economics as well now really start to make sense as well. So let's take a look at how you get there. So imagine you have a production system. So with Avid, it will be a Media Central platform system. You've got your shared storage, in that case, a Nexus from Avid. You get your Media Central production management, which you guys know as Interplay Production, has been rebranded last year. And you get your media composers, your Adobe connected to it. You've got your web user interface, which at Avid is called the Media Central Cloud UX. And you probably have some sort of middleware to do your archive management. So in that case, it could be an Avid solution like Interplay Archive Manager or a newer Media Central Share Library to archive content onto your LTO. This is very, very basic. But like I said earlier, there's more and more needs for storage. So we announced the Nexus Nearline to give you some more tiered storage management on-prem. But then you replicate that by many, many, many sites. So you end up having the same configuration at many sites, and you are doubling down on the cost of everything, software versions, NAS storage, LTO tape, and the cost of those are just going up and up as we go. Then you have to manage LTO migration, LTO 5, LTO 6, LTO 7. It's a lot of fun every time, right? And of course, you also have your sites who just don't have the archive, and they're not happy because they don't have archives. So now they start making copies on USB disk and saving files wherever they can. It's a total chaos to manage. So one of the things we've been working on with Avid for the last year was how can we help someone who should be in a situation to transition toward the cloud? And we're talking about transition. As we talked today, it's not just a big switch. You're just going to say, okay, tomorrow we're in the cloud. It's going to be a journey to get there. The journey has to make sense, not only from the workflow point of view, but also from the economics point of view. So one of the things we added to our products now is the ability to select one site and to say, hey, you're going to be a Uber shared library system. So even though everyone, or mostly everyone here, has their own local archive, now everybody is capable of publishing content to that Uber archive system. One of the nice features as well is you don't need necessarily to move the media technically here. If I already archived it, I may just want to register my asset here. So it becomes centralized. The asset itself is centralized. The pointers are, but not necessarily the media. So suddenly they become searchable from a central index point of view. You can also move the media. And as you start doing that, of course, you can start to think about how you're going to eliminate some of those local archives. You can say, I may not need LTO anymore here. I'm going to just use that one system here, so I don't need my LTO system here, and I'm starting to make some economies, because now that site is going to archive to this site. There's still nothing of the cloud in here. We just started to do some centralization. And then Eventually, you could imagine that maybe that site here doesn't even have production capabilities. It's really just a bunker, and I have my shared library running in there. So everybody now can contribute to that shared library, but it still is not the cloud. But when you get to that point, of course, it makes perfect sense, to turn that into a cloud-based solution. So when you talk about the cloud, we talk about a lot of things today, and the different type of storage and things like this. And one of the things that I think is very important for us to keep in mind is all those technologies are just great. It's very easy to geek out on them, but you also have to make sure they're very easy to use. You know, all that great technologies, all the Kubernetes, the containers, all the replication, all those microservices everywhere, it's all great. But if you don't expose it in a way that is easier for you to maintain and to understand and to administrate, it's not going to be a great path forward. So here, one of the things that Avid has been trying to do here is to say, hey, we have this product called Nexus, where it's been very, very famous for the ease of use of the management of the workspaces, how you can resize things, how you can rename, give permissions. So what Avid has been doing in a transition to the cloud is to port our file system to the cloud. And that file system, Nexus, now runs in the cloud on top of some of the cloud vendors' storage, but it is exposed through a Nexus file system structure. So now the way you manage your cloud storage feels and acts the same way you will manage your local storage. So suddenly, the learning experience, the transition to a cloud-based solution, yes, behind it's using cloud storage. Yes, it's something that you may be able to use on the side, but because it's exposed through the same file system capabilities, suddenly it's a seamless integration. So you already learn how to manage this. You will manage it the same way. He also had the capabilities to manage multiple tiers of storage, and that's one of the very cool things in the cloud, where you have those different tiers of storage, where the restore time defines really how much you're going to spend on that storage, right? You want to restore within 2 hours, within 3 days, within 2 weeks, and you can go deeper and deeper in the online storage, the cloud storage, and it gets cheaper and cheaper, but the restore times are just getting longer and longer and longer. So this is something now that's going to be exposed through a familiar user interface, through a Nexus user interface, just like you will do in your production facility today. The shared library will also add all the workflows and the processes to help you manage moving media to different tiers of storage, and using those local tiers of storage as well as sources. So now you can start to see that this green box here not only manages the storage in the cloud, but has hooks in every facilities and can move content automatically between all of those sites based on aging rules. You can define that each site will have media local for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, maybe it gets moved to a nearline. After the nearline, it gets moved to the LTO. After a year, it gets moved maybe to a cloud, a deep storage in the cloud. All of that's done from a single point user interface. Once you get there, now you really start to use the cloud for what it is good at. You have this solution running in there. It's super secure. It's super redundant. What else can you do? That's where all those services like AI and things like this comes in as well. Once your content is centralized in this location, you can start to use all of those cloud services to transcode, prepare content for OTT distribution and things like this. And I'll get back to that in a few minutes. So on this journey to the cloud, now that we elected a cloud to be our centralized shared library, everybody can publish to it. You can continue to start making a decision to reduce cost on the different locations by removing more LTOs and maybe eventually starting to remove altogether local archive needs. Now you end up in a situation where everything is, I don't like the word centralized in the cloud because it's not really centralized, but from the operational point of view, from the user workflow point of view, it feels like it's centralized and it's running in the cloud. And now no one has local backup capabilities. The other thing that Avid has been working on, the second workflow that really piggybacks on that very clearly, is not archive on demand, but it's production on demand. So another thing that Avid announced at NAB was something called editorial on demand. Now you can spawn your production cycle in the cloud as well. So our friends at Discovery were talking about how they move play out to the cloud and how the next steps is going to look at the production. It's a reality today. It's something that's doable. The economics are still not 100% there for everything, but the technology enables us now to spawn on demand entire production capabilities in the cloud. The good thing about this scenario is you already have all your media here. They've already been stored here. There's a lot of tools. Someone asked, how do you ingest all those live streams into your cloud? There's many possibilities today. Avid is using a plethora of partners to enable live stream, IP stream ingest directly into a cloud storage. So you get all your media in the cloud storage. You manage them into your Nexus user interface. So you have like an online cloud storage. If you want, then you have a nearline cloud storage and deeper and deeper and deeper. And now you can spawn editing bays. You can spawn production management system where you have all those services that you know and love to use to do your production. And all you need now is a laptop to remote to your cloud solution through a web browser or a Zero client of some sort to connect to that cloud system and start editing and producing content. It gets very, very powerful, especially when the distribution channels that you have are not necessarily down on-prem, but really on the cloud, which is more and more the case today. So again, Discovery is a perfect example where today they ingest in the cloud, go down on-prem to produce, and then they go back up to the cloud to distribute. In that case here, you could really do your full ingest, editing, archiving, and then pushing out without never coming down on Earth. So the end scenario, of course, we all know we're going there, not tomorrow, but maybe faster than any of us realize here. It's really where everything will run in the cloud. And again, one of the secret sauce here is not going to be just the technology, it's going to see how we expose that and make it very easy to use. You can't ask anyone to be an engineer to understand how to launch a system here and use something and trigger a transcode. So those two solutions, shared library on demand and editorial on demand, have been launched at NAB and are available this year. So some of the capabilities now that once you run in the cloud that you have access, it's centralizing your asset with or without the media. Again, this power to be able to register asset to a centralized database, if you will, that's searchable across the globe from everybody through the cloud services is very useful. You don't need necessarily to move the media there. You can have rules that says, everything I have on my system, I want to make it visible from the centralized location, but I don't want to move the media there until someone needs to get that media. Because then you can play probability games, right? Where if someone needs that media, chances are that somebody else will need it. So at that time, it's maybe a good time to move that media into the cloud. So you can use usage patterns and predictions and stats to really decide what media needs to go to the cloud and what media can stay on-prem. All of this is possible today. Stores, of course, you want to make sure that everything you store is in a very specific format, so you don't have to rewrap or retranscode all the time. So everything is stored in P1A. All your metadata not only are in a database and index, but also stored as AF backup for editing. And anything that's ancillary to the video production as well has to be there. You can't just archive your media and your sequences. You have to archive your graphics. You want to archive your scripts, your news scripts, right? If you're working in a newsroom system and you want to be able to search your archive through the newsroom point of view, you want to be able to do that. So those as well get archived in there and everything. And then on the right-hand side, using, again, the power of the cloud, that's where you get access to all those cool tools, transcoding, AI, automatic indexing, and things like this. A very, again, I want to point out this one with an asterisk. It's not something that we released in 2018, but I think it's one of the most exciting things is really how we're going to help you not store 20 times the same asset. And there's a lot of work going on here, which I'm going to talk to you in a few seconds. So this was kind of a journey to get from, multi-sites, if you want, to go through the cloud. But I keep insisting on the usability of all of these things because, again, I'm a user. I'm a film editor by trade. If I don't have the right tool to do my job, there's no point of me having all that goodness available. So, when it comes to discoverability, tough word for me, it's searching is a very important metadata, an important tool. And if you ask different people in the organization, their needs are very different. A librarian probably knows exactly what he or she wants, right? Where a producer may just want to see everything that Donald Trump said in the last few weeks. So different needs. A good example as well is enhance all of that stuff with AI. And I found this on the web, making this presentation makes me giggle. Can you imagine that? Let's just make sure you guys were following the presentation. But it's as well how you can leverage AI on top of searching to create more metadata. And I'll show you that in a few examples here. So searching, it's important. But when you start to have those massive archive in the cloud sharing content, you need something that's massively scalable. And again, that's where the cloud lets you be way more scalable, much cheaper than if you were to try to scale that much on-prem as well. So the different type of technologies available in the cloud, the NoSQL database and things like this let you really scale massively with a very, very small percentage of the cost that if you were trying to do that on-prem. It can be extremely fast because you can grow, again, your servers horizontally and vertically as well to get more powerful. But more importantly, it can be hybrid as well. And this whole workflow that I just talked to you about, this migration, is really building on these hybrid models. There's no one that's just going to flip a switch and go all to the cloud. We're going to be in this transition for many years. But again, when you search, what do you want to search? Of course, you want to search your metadata. You want to search your phonetic. I'll show you that in a second. And you want to enhance your search with all those AI tools. So here's an example of a phonetic search in our user interface where we index the phonemes. So if I'm looking for Gaddafi, and I don't know how to type Gaddafi because I know there's an H somewhere, but I just don't know where. If you type it wrong and it's just a metadata search, or if it's a speech to text, you'll never find it, right? Because it has to be an exact match. And then you need to start, or you need to go into proximity type of search where it's close enough. But the beauty of phonetic indexing, it listens to the audio. And even with my accent, it's working, which is pretty cool. And if I type Gaddafi and I forgot the H, as long as the phonetic, when I'm typing, is close enough, you will find that. So if you look at a representation of that search, when I found that clip, you can see here the example. I've searched for all those terms. Very important as well, we talked about that earlier today as well, the confidence level of how confident is the system or the AI that what you're looking for is really what you're looking for. So you can filter through confidence as well. But again, it's all about the metadata representation. And in that case, it's time-based metadata, words in a sentence. So here you can see, for instance, all those words, where they are in time, in a timeline, and you can navigate to them. As you combine phonetic search with other type of AI, for instance, like face recognition, you could now do searches that are much more efficient. Like, I like to find a clip of Donald Trump in camera, right? So I'm looking for his face. So I'm looking for Donald Trump's face. But I want to hear in the audio Obama in Syria, for instance. You will find that video where he's on camera. I can't guarantee it's him, but someone, while he's on camera, said the word Obama in Syria. You could even define that you want to search Obama in Syria within 5 seconds of each other in the video clip. So you know it's probably in the same interview in the same context. Now you can enhance that with even more and more things. You could say, I want to find him with a red tie. We talk about object recognition as well. All those things becomes possible now. And again, once all your assets are in the cloud, it gets much, much easier and cheaper to do that. One of the things that Avid has launched as well is this Avid AI program. And someone was asking the question about, hey, maybe I'm storing all my stuff on Amazon, but I want to use somebody else's AI service. How do I do that? Do I move my media there? Or can I run the Amazon service? The answer was absolutely not, which I thought was a very honest and very good answer. It's how, again, the system is going to help you leverage AI from any vendors. If you went to an AB, and especially in my case, I'm very sensitive to languages because I'm French. So there are some AI that are better at recognizing French versus English. There are some AIs that are better at recognizing faces than others and stuff. You probably will find the one AI you love. Maybe you really like that brand, that company, because the needs you have, they're very good at. So again, the idea of the platform is not to corner you into using one vendor. It's not, you can use only, for instance, just Microsoft AI, the video indexer capabilities. Maybe you want to use the Amazon, maybe you want to use Google, or maybe you want to use some local vendor. We worked at Avid with a company called Valosa. They're very, very good for Swedish and things like this because they come from Sweden. So my Swedish customers, they'll just plug a Valosa system and expose it through the platform. So this Avid AI program is meant for basically being very open and very capable of using any AI vendors that you want. And that's another cool thing. We work with customers to say, hey, what AI vendor do you really like? And then we work with those AI vendors, and they get integrated on the platform, and suddenly their services gets available through the user interface just natively without doing a lot of work and configuration. So you'll see at IBC the demonstration where probably we'll have a half a dozen AI system plugged in on the system, just floating us with metadata. Sometimes could be too much. Oh, I used it again. I really love that one. Another example of AI, and we touched very quickly on that earlier today, it's quality control. So one of the apps that we launched at NAB was our quality app in our Media Central web user interface, which you can see here. And here's an example of a SaaS offering from Avid with a service called Illuminate. That's an AI-based, it's a machine learning-based service that runs in the cloud. And what it does, it runs a quality control test on your clips, listen again to the soundbite, so the voice, recognize the phonemes, read the closed captioning files, and tell you, okay, this is English, the voice is in Spanish. This is not the same language. First thing, you automatically detect languages. And then, once it detects that, it will tell you if the closed captioning is timed correctly or not. So you get real-time information about your files that you're going to publish, and you get the accuracy, the amount of coverage, the synchronicity. You get real-time, not real-time, sorry, but you get live data here about how those closed captioning data. And the more you feed a service like this, the better it becomes as well. Again, because it's machine learning, so the sounds, it keeps learning and getting better. So the confidence level of those results are just getting higher over time. Once you get there, of course, it's very easy to now pop up another user interface. In that case, that's a timeline view where you get your video, your audio, but again, all that closed captioning, timing information, so you can now go and fix it. The system can also fix it for you if you trust it, but if you don't, you can just go manually and fix the languages or fix the timing. And that's, again, something that will save hours and hours and hours of man-hours, right, to go through all that footage. One of our customers, which will remain nameless, is using this today for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours of footage. There's no way they could just have people going through all that footage, listening to all the audio tracks, make sure they're all the right language, that all the closed captionings are the right languages, and make sure they're all timed correctly. So very interesting use case as well of once your media is in the cloud, and that could be based on proxies as well, how you can leverage some of those power in the cloud to just run those as a service. And as we pointed out earlier in our presentation, because it's in the cloud, you get access to that elasticity. So another good aspect as well, if you were to move a library to the cloud, you can just do this one-time move, and then every week, in real time, you just keep adding more stuff. But you can run an AI service for 2-3 months, full-blown, you're taking 100,000 of hours in a month to index everything that you just moved up to the cloud. Then you reduce the usage of your AI service to just the minimum of what you need on a weekly basis. So again, this is a great power that the cloud is giving you, is this cost control that you can decide when you need to turn up and things. It can be done automatically, of course, or it can be done manually through the use of some dashboards and things. So that's another exciting aspect of the usage of the cloud here. So I think this was my last slide. Any questions? No? Excellent. If you have any questions, Rob is here as well from Avid. So feel free to find us. Thank you very much.